What to do, squads? What's happening, everybody? Welcome to another special episode of Have You Read That Movie? The show in which I talk about books that have been adapted into films. Ah, yeah, daddy! Welcome to a very wonderful episode of Have You Read That Movie? Way later than it needed to be. I was doing this probably for the month of Halloween. Well, that didn't happen, as you can all tell by my wonderful release of this episode in February. The month of love. Nothing screams love like good horror. Very, very good horror. I'm just kidding. This is not good horror. Oh shit, I just said now. Oh god, I've just said too much already. So let's dive into what am I talking about here today. So today we are going to be talking about the book. I have it right here. Fuck, I dropped my phone. Oh god, my life's in shambles. Where'd it go? Oh god, there it is. I found it. That's staying in the video. I'm reading John Dies at the End. Well, I already read. Why am I saying I'm reading it? I already read this book. John Dies at the End by David Wong, who's actually, his pseudonym is, oh god, I can't read with these fucking things on. Jason Pargan. I don't know why I've never read this man's name before. I didn't know his name was Jason Pargan. He is he wrote for Cracked.com, obviously everyone's favorite website that is still so active, 2007 website, Cracked.com, really famous. Everybody loves Cracked.com still. Let me be honest. Am I right, gamers? Rise up. So, I read John Dies at the End, which was publicated as a web series. It was a web serial back in 2001, gained a lot of traction, became a manuscript in 2004, and is now published in 2005 and can be found at any local bookstore. But in 2012, there was a wonderful low-budget film released from director of Phantasm, a really underrated and underappreciated little horror film that I actually really enjoy. It's not like a spectacular movie, but it's fun. It's an enjoyable little romp if you want to check it out. From Don Coscarelli. I'm going to tell you this much. I have been practicing his last name so many times, and I fucked up so many times on saying his name. Sorry, Don. I love you, but your last name really fucks me up. This came out in, oh no, it says 2013. Wait, it says the release date was 2012 on here, but then you go down, it says January 25th, 2013. Okay, so this was, the budget for this was like less than $1 million. It's a very, very low budget film. And it didn't make a ton of money back. It made only $100 and some odd $1,000 or so, almost 150,000, I want to say, but I think it was a little under that. So yeah, it wasn't a huge success. It wasn't really pulling out the gangbusters here, but it was a very limited release film. I remember seeing it on TV. I used to watch Reels Channel back in the day. This was back when Reels Channel was a movie station and it used to talk about films, and there was these critics that talked about John Dies at the End. I don't remember what they did for it or what they said about it, but I just remember being I've never even heard of this movie, what? And that's how I found out about what that was. I had a lot of friends that read the books that said that they love John Dies at the End. They said it was a great book and they wanted me to read it and they wanted me to give it a shot. I don't know if that was a good choice, but we'll see how it goes, I guess. By the way, everybody, spoiler warning. If you haven't read and or if seen the film and you don't want any form of spoilers, not a single one, click away now, come back, and and I'm going to just talk about this book. So let's get right into it. Let's talk about John Dies at the End. We're going to talk about the novel first. The book came first, then the movie. So we're going to talk about the book by David Wong, aka Jason Pargan, because David Wong is the character of this novel, and the story goes like this. I don't know why I sounded like I was about to jump into the Prince of Bel-Air opening theme, but that was just about to happen. In West Philadelphia, born and raised. John and his friend David are together. They are kind of like paranormal investigators. They experience a lot of weird things, and it's because of a wonderful thing called the soy sauce. The soy sauce is a drug in which once it's injected in your body, you begin to see things that are not from our world, but from other dimensions, and pretty much opens up a part of your brain. You become psychic. You can read people's minds. You can read what their thoughts are going to be. You can guess what they're going to have, like they're going to say before they even say it. You can guess what's in somebody's pockets. It almost is like a heightened senses, you would say. But then it also has a lot of horrible lasting effects where you see things that aren't really there, or they could actually be there. We just don't know it because they're not from our dimension and our brains can't perceive that kind of stuff. But once you've unlocked that piece of the brain, you can see all these things, interdimensional creatures and other horrifying monstrosities elsewhere. So this book is really good in the fact of, I love the parts where you don't know whether anything is real or not real. You don't know if it's the drugs that are doing it or if it's actually things that they see, and that the drug is legitimately opening their eyes to things that they can't, that you just don't understand. And I love that stuff. I love stories, especially horror, that does that. Like, one thing I can think about that does really well in that kind of same idea is John Carpenter's The Thing. The Thing is one of those amazing horror films where the characters don't know who is actually the thing, the thing that's consuming everybody and turning them all into these monsters. And it's such a great concept, and you don't know who to trust, what's going on, or what's happening, or if you know if this is real or not real. It's great psychological horror that I've loved in so many pieces of media. Even movies like The Haunting do this really well. We don't know whether the ghosts are real or if it's just the character going absolutely bonkers. And that's what makes this book really, really entertaining. And I think that's the stuff I really latched to. I really, really liked it. Most of the characters are pretty well defined. I mean, it's not really a hard read. It's a pretty simple read. It reads fairly well and flows really good. You've got a lot of really good narration, explanations. Everything is well laid out for you to understand what's happening. There's never a moment where I was questioning what's going on. I was always pretty on board with what's happening in the book, and it was a really good, solid read, in my opinion. That's why I really like this book a lot, at least within a writing style-wise. It's not bad. It's still pretty good overall. Structure-wise, it's a little messy. It's got, it just kind of jumps all over the place, but it has a pretty good framing device, which I really like. The framing device, which is John is talking to a journalist named Arnie and is telling his story to him to get him to know what is the soy sauce and what it's about and what it's done to him and where he is and what's happening. And things start to really unfold. I also really love the ending of this book. I don't know what it is, but wow, these things keep falling off. This thing's gonna fall off my face. These glasses are really tiny. But I really like the ending of this book because I just love the things that just kind of pop up at the end. There are a lot of great twists at the end, and I was like, this is amazing. Like, this twist ending is really good. And I don't know if it kind of has changed my mentality of the rest of the book, but as of right now, as it stands, it kind of hasn't. I'm gonna be honest, wasn't a humongous fan of this book. I definitely think there's a lot of people that love this book, and I totally understand why. I could see the things of why people love this book, but at the end of the day, I don't know if I was really on board 100%, which is a little disappointing. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that a little bit later, but let me keep talking about the things I really like about the book. So what I really like is that they have a really great twist ending where Arnie, who's been doing this interview with David Wong, it comes to find out that he himself is on the sauce in the moment, but then also that Arnie is dead. Arnie has not been real this whole time. He's actually a dead person in the trunk of a car, and he's like, well, I'm sorry, Ernie, I didn't know that you were dead, and I didn't know that I was just talking to someone that was just in my mind. And then he's like, what? No, I'm alive, because he drops that, his character is black, but at the same time, David sees him as just a normal schlubby white guy. And so that's the thing, is like, it's really those mind game elements that really makes you go, whoa, that's a good twist. That was a really good twist that I did not see coming, and I didn't think there was going to be a twist on that. Then there's also the big twist that David thinks that he has killed Amy and put her body in his shed in the back. And then it comes to find out it's himself, and that he is also a monster from the other dimension because he sees the mark on his foot. And then he begins to laugh. And that is a great moment in which it's like, holy shit, what a good twist that was. And I'll tell you this much. Those are the moments in which I said to myself, maybe this book is worth a reread. If you look at it in the perspective of, this is not really David Wong. This is a monster from another dimension. So those are the elements of the story I really, 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 really loved. And I think that is worth all of the time and the effort to put into this story, because I really liked all of those elements. They're so really well done that it's hard for me to really hate them. The first half of this book, the first like decent chunk of this book, I was pretty into it. I thought it was actually not that bad. It was a really interesting and entertaining read. But it wasn't until I got to my second half of the book reading and I put the book down and I picked it back up months later, and I don't know what happened, but the second half of this book was not as good, and I felt was kind of painfully average, I would definitely say. I really didn't care much for the ending, with pretty much with most of the stuff going on with Amy, and then there was all the stuff that was going on with John and Amy going into the other dimension and things like that. And I don't know, there was just something about it. I just wasn't really attaching myself to the story anymore. I felt like I was just kind of getting bored because so many of the jokes became penis, and then you're supposed to laugh at that. After the 700th penis jokes or penis reference, I kind of got bored of it, and the humor was so juvenile at this point that I started to get really aggravated. It kind of made the story feel really kind of disjointed. And here's what I'm talking about, is that I'm not saying that I hate juvenile humor. I'm not saying I hate, oh God, I'm going to throw up. Okay, never mind. I'm not throwing up. I'm not saying I hate juvenile humor, and I'm not saying that I'm a prude when it comes to dick jokes, titch jokes, butt jokes, this and that jokes. I'm not trying to be a prude about it, but at the same time, after so long of just that kind of humor, I just didn't find it funny. It just wasn't funny to me. Maybe if I was like 13 years old, I would have really liked it. But for this book, it was so disjointed. Like sometimes it was really funny, and then there were times where it wasn't. And most of the time, I thought it wasn't really all that funny. I maybe chuckled at a couple of moments and scenes and a couple of, dialogue sections, but there wasn't a whole lot that I really was laughing at. It was kind of like really early internet humor. And I totally think that's the biggest problem, is like, this is stuff that back in 2007, I guarantee was really funny and people were okay with stuff like this. But now it's not really as funny, and there's some times where I was a little like, ooh, that's not okay anymore. There's a lot of offensive things in here. They love to casually just drop homophobic slurs at each other. They casually drop racial slurs. They also casually will drop, special needs slurs as a means to get a joke across. And for me, I just don't think that type of humor is funny. In 2007, yeah, people were doing that all over the place, and that's not okay. It was bad. There's a reason why we don't do it anymore, or we try not to do it anymore. Some people are trying to be genuine human beings now and are trying to get rid of that past, like myself. I'm trying to get rid of, really bad things that I used to say. And, I'm going to be honest, that was the type of jokes that we all kind of made back in the day. And I'm not going to say it wasn't a thing, but it was, but now we are different people. We've grown from that, and we've understood why this is not okay. And, our perception has changed. So now reading this as an adult, you're like, oh, this is not very mature. It's so juvenile to a point where it doesn't feel like an adult book. But then you're reading and you're like, this is not, this is too adult for even, teenagers to read then. So at the same time, it's like, well, who the fuck is this book for? Is this for like people that are older, or are these for people that are teenagers? It's bordering on that middle of the road of, this is definitely a book for teenagers, but it's so like, adult in its humor and language and the things that they're doing and saying, that I could argue, I don't know if this is even appropriate for a teenager, but I just don't know. I think if I was like 15, 16 years old and I was reading this, I would have loved this book. But now, as a 25-year-old, I just don't resonate with this. I don't really resonate with these characters. I really found David to be kind of a terrible person. He, like, anytime he was describing a woman, it was always by her breast size. It was always by how incredibly sexy she was. And I was like, dude, stop it. Just stop that. I hate male characters that literally cannot describe a woman without describing how insanely sexy they are and how big their absolute big honking bazongas are. It's like, why? Why can't we just say she has beautiful brown hair and, big blue eyes, or, just describe her as a person. Like, don't describe her as some walking pair of tits that you want to stick your wiener into. Like, that's all he does, though. That's all David Wong does, which then makes me just go, I hate you, David. You're kind of a scumbag. And then the worst is when it does like the whole, but David, you're such a good guy, says Amy. And then I went, no, he's not. He's a terrible person. He says so many terrible things. He does so many terrible things. And literally in the same page, he drops a racial slur. And I just went, oh yeah, good guy David over here. David is such a good man. Wow, toxic masculinity, isn't it great? Like, I feel like a man baby wrote this. Like, in that regard, I was like, man, I feel like he's white knighting himself. David is definitely like one of those guys that are like, I'm a nice guy, but if you don't date me, you fucking suck, you dumb bitch. He's one of those kind of people that it just screams that. And it's just like, I hate characters like him. I hate characters like that in books. And not to say that we can't write characters like that. That's fine. But he's our main character and we're supposed to like him. That's the problem. That's where I'm like, whew, I just can't do it. Just can't. This book is a real mixed bag on me. The humor is just so juvenile, and then it did drag for me, especially by the second half. This has a rock solid start, and I really like the mystery elements to it, but there's so much that I just wanted more. I just wanted something a little bit more meatier. I wanted something a little more clever. I wanted something with a little bit more pizzazz. When I think about comedy books, I think about Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, or I think about books by Terry Pratchett. Those books are very funny and very clever, but they also, they're really good at painting really good visual gags and, just kind of throwing in really clever dialogue to retort. And it's really funny in that regard, because that's why I love reading Discworld. Discworld does this really well, and Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy does it really, really well. Even Good Omens, I just finished that. That was a really well-written book, and it was extremely, extremely talented, and has so much clever writing in it that I just kind of sat back and went, yeah, that is what I want to read. If I'm going to read a book about comedy, I think this book definitely fails at that. I don't think the comedy is very funny. But then I also don't think the horror is very good, because the problem is every time they were describing a horrific monster and it was starting to set up like a tone, it would drop what its genitals would look like. And then you would just suddenly be sucked out of the moment of while you were building up like decent tension. And then you talked about the monster's penis. And then I just kind of went, okay, it's like that kind of humor does not appeal to me. And I just don't get it. I just want to like this book. I didn't walk into it going to hate this. I was actually expecting to really like this book a ton. I just didn't, though. I just didn't like it as much. I might give it a reread. If I give it the shot of David is actually a monster from another dimension, and if I read it in that perspective, maybe this book will be better. David is a monster that we kind of understand why he says all these horrible things that are just very vulgar and very awful, but I don't know. This book is just, it's a real mixed bag. I gave it a 2 out of 5 on Goodreads. If you want to follow my Goodreads, you can check it out in the description down below. I'm going to put my Goodreads down there. So if you do want to follow me on there, go right ahead. I don't care. You'll see what I'm reading, and you'll see kind of what I think about books. If you want to know what my taste is like. But I'll tell you this right now. I don't have a whole lot of books on there, and I'm reading a shitload of books right now. So kind of getting back on a big reading kick after having a big reading slump. So yeah, that's happening. But yeah, John Dies at the End is just... it's just kind of a disappointment. I really want to like this book more. I might give it a reread again. But I definitely think that this book definitely needed some work. I don't think it's one of the best books I've ever read. I think it's a fairly disappointing horror novel. And it's not very funny for a comedy. So I gave it a 2 out of 5. I was kind of disappointed. Even though I think there's a lot of good things in this book, there's a lot of good ideas. I think this book has a lot of ideas, but doesn't do everything 100% well. I'm hoping that the sequels do a little bit better. I know Jason Pargan wrote 3 other books. He wrote 2 other books in this series, so it's a trilogy right now. And I want to see how it goes. I want to see if it gets better. I hope that maybe his writing style gets better. I hope that maybe his humor is a little bit better. So we'll see how that goes. I might check those out someday. It's on my want to read list, and we'll see how it goes, because I feel like I should fairly judge this series fair and reasonable. So, but for what this is, I think this is a book that people will love. I definitely think I'm in the minority with this book. So I would say, please check it out anyways. See for yourself what you think of it. But I'm going to say that with most of everything, unless if I know I've read something so shitty that I'm like, no, there's no way anybody could like this. I think there are people that will really like this book, because there are still a lot of people that love this story a lot and have given it nothing but praise on the internet, and I'm just going to be one of those that says this wasn't my cup of tea. So you could take this with a grain of salt, what I feel about this book, because I feel like I didn't read the same book as other people. Now I'm going to switch. I'm switching over. I'm taking those things off. I can't see where the balls. Wow, I look so much better. Everything was so blurry. It also doesn't help. I was wearing those really shitty glasses that, have like marker written all over it. So now let's talk about the 2012 or 2013 film. We still don't know what year that movie came out now, because there's 2 different dates. But this film I remember hearing about, and I was didn't know what to think about it. Didn't really catch my attention. Wasn't really anything I was planning on watching. But I had a roommate that watched it and said that he liked it enough, or he liked the story a lot. He liked John dies at the end, and he was one of the big recommends for the reason why I wanted to check this out. And I just finished watching the movie, actually. Literally just finished watching the movie, and it was very, very similar to how I feel about the book. The first half of the movie was actually pretty good. I liked most of the first half of the story. I think well executed, actually, in visual form than it was in reading format. Like watching him buy a bratwurst and then hold it and then put it up to his ear, and it's a cell phone and it works. Very funny. It was visually a very funny gag. There's a lot of things in the story that I think as a visual gag would have been much better than reading it as a descriptor kind of thing. It's like, okay, this could be a lot funnier if I'm like, if like I'm seeing this visually as like a, with the pacing of a film. And I think that's what really benefits with John Dies at the End when it comes to comedy. Comedy wise, it's much funnier, and movie wise, it's a lot more interesting, because you have a lot of the visual elements, you have, more of the experience of that. And especially with the camera work, it's pretty good, actually. It's not bad in the first half of the movie. And for a movie that's under $1 million, it looks actually fairly decent. And, other than some ropey effects here and there, it was, it overall didn't have a terrible style. It looked cheap. It definitely looked cheap, but it was pretty good overall. Until we hit the second half. The second half of this film, suddenly everything looked horrible. The special effects started to really show its just grimy disgustingness, especially when they go into the other dimension. It looked terrible. Some of the acting ranged from pretty decent to pretty bad. It wasn't really good. Oh God, like the whole ending is just like a fever dream of just, this is not great. Imagine they took a 400-page novel, but then condensed it to an hour-and-a-half film, and you cut out huge chunks of the book. Like, they cut out all these characters. Like, Jennifer Lopez is a character in John Dies at the End. Not the actress Jennifer Lopez from their high school, who just so happens to be named Jennifer Lopez. She is a whole character in the book and has her whole sequence pretty much just gone. Her whole character is immediately wiped across the floor. She doesn't even exist anymore. She's just non-existent. They gave Amy Jennifer Lopez's character, which then in fact also Amy gets ganked in this movie too, because she's really just the Jennifer Lopez character, and then she doesn't even have all the development she gets in the second half of the book that she gets with all of her stuff. And then that whole thing is really insane and weird and crazy in its own weird rights. You know, Amy's story is pretty much non-existent. She doesn't even go with them to the other dimension. She just kind of stays back, and it's just the John and Dave show. There's so much of the book that even though I complained about it, I just think it did it better. It's just weird. I just was like, well, no, the book actually technically did it better, even though I would argue it was still kind of, ropey, but it's at least well developed in the book. And in the movie, it's just rushed. It's so rushed, but it also looks really bad. Visually, it looks terrible. The end half of the movie is some of the worst it looked. I was like, wow, what happened to the quality of this film? Like, because not to say it was like amazing to look at in the first half of the film, but it was really competent and pretty well made overall. Like, I didn't mind like the lighting, the shadowing. They made it look pretty good for a low budget production. Some of the camera work was pretty decent too, and they were keeping a lot of the good chunk elements of really the book. Like, they even had Camel Holocaust, which was John's band. They did not the name of the band, but like they did the song Camel Holocaust, and it was all done in the movie, and it was great. They had the Jamaican and the soy sauce stuff, and they made things that were really from the book, and it looked incredible. And then the second half, it really shit the bed. It really shit the bed. It's kind of an embarrassment, really, when I'm already like criticizing the shit out of this book, and then here I am watching this movie, and I was like, I think this works better as a movie, and I really was on board that the movie was better than the book for a good chunk of it, until I realized, oh no, there's only a half hour left of this movie, and then I was like, what are they gonna do? How are they gonna wrap up this story that's 400 pages in a half hour? And I'll tell you this much, they didn't do a very good job. The special effects looked like to the equivalence of watching a Spy Kids movie. It was really bad. It was pretty terrible. Everything about it just did not work. It was like things that you remember from the book were either thrown out the window or changed immensely. Like Barkley the dog, it sacrifices itself to kill Korok for some reason, which was not what happened in the book whatsoever. In the book, the dog eats like a C4 biscuit, and then John's like, shit, that's our C4. We need to have the dog to shit it out. So he gives the dog bean burritos so that it would just shit the thing out, and they're trying to force the dog to poop out the biscuit. Amy even comes along with them in this whole journey, and she's not even there in the movie. She's just okay, I did my thing. I used my non-existent hand because her hand gets cut off in an accident, and that's a whole thing that has a lot of emotional impact that actually it's discovered is about her family and how she lost her hand and the things that she had to go through without having that limb. It's really interesting. She opens up a ghost store with her phantom limb, which is her non-existent hand, but she has the phantom hand feel, so she's able to open the door that opens to the other world and the other dimension. And I think man, it's just they really, really just gutted this book. I didn't expect them to, because they were doing a really good job. They didn't even do the twist that David was not really David. He's actually a monster from the other world, because they didn't establish a mark on somebody. There's a tattoo or a symbol that really shows, hey, this is, this is a person from another dimension. So they didn't even have any of that. So yeah, I don't know. It was weird. It was just kind of weird that they would just kind of push all that stuff away from the book. And it's just kind of a disappointment. I was really disappointed with it. As much as I like the director's other film, whatever it's called, Phantasm. As much as I like Phantasm, I definitely think the first half of this movie was really good, but what a really disappointing and rack-shambled ending of a movie for a book that I think, actually, I'm going to be honest, could have been a really well-adapted story. I think if this was adapted a little bit better, especially, and had better effects and other things like that, this could have been a really good movie, and I think actually could have benefited and maybe fixed a lot of the problems I had with the book. And also, they cleaned up David's character a lot more, so he's not as assholey. He's a little bit more likable, at least in this regard. I like David a little bit more. It's kind of a weird movie. It's a weird movie to experience, and it's also just kind of like a little disappointing. I definitely don't think I liked it very much as well. I would definitely say, actually, I think I liked it less than the book. As much as I like the first half of the book, I like the first half of the film. The second half is where I was like, yeah, no. They're adapting things, but they're rushing it. They put it in different parts of the story, and it's just, I don't know. It's kind of a mess. It's a messy movie, and it really just kind of, I'm surprised it even, it did what it did, and I don't know. And I'm surprised they didn't give this movie like 2 hours. Like, if it got maybe an extra half hour, maybe it would have been better. But yeah, maybe a little bit of a better budget. I feel like this deserved a better budget. This would have been a great fan film to put on the internet, but not as a feature film that went to theaters. That's the part that blows my mind a little bit more. So at the end of the day, I'm gonna give John Dies at the End a rock solid. It's gonna get like a good 3 out of 10. It's not a very good movie. I think it's a pretty lame ass movie, especially by the end. The effects are really embarrassing. It really kind of shits the bed in quality. I really don't care for it, and even the animation wasn't very good. You could tell this was just a really, really low budget film. If you're watching it for like the camp quality, I guess there's something there for you, but for me, John Dies at the End was kind of an underwhelming experience all around. I'm a little disappointed that I didn't like it nearly as much as I wanted to. I really did want to, though. I genuinely walked into both the film and the movie expecting to like it. I never walk into anything wanting to hate it. So don't get me wrong. If you love this book or you love this movie, don't let me ruin that for you. I definitely think I have a minority opinion on both ends. And I think that it is what it is. It is what it is. And I think that at the end of the day, we have to respect each other's opinions, and that maybe not everything is for everyone. And that's why we all have opinions. Ain't that cool? So yeah, I would definitely say if you want to check out John Dies at the End, go ahead. If it sounds like your cup of tea, do it. I recommend you to do it. Anyways, I'm not going to stop you just because I didn't like it. So yeah, if you want to read along with us, feel free to. Feel free to join in on the conversation. Don't be afraid to do that. And we will see you next time. Take care.